Thanks to MiHoYo for inviting me on their media server, I've been able to play and test Navia quite a lot, and I can tell you, she's incredibly fun and strong, but has a few problems. Before talking about that, let's explain how she works. She's a 5-star Geoclaimer. Her talent descriptions are insanely overcomplicated, especially her skill, which is the most important part of her kit. Basically, when anyone in the party picks up a Crystallite shield, she gets one crystal shrapnel charge, which we will simply call bullets. You can have up to 6 bullets. When you use your skill, she deals geo damage in front of her in a cone shape. She consumes all the bullets, and depending on how many you had, she will do a different amount of damage. The multiplier you see on the talent page is for when you have no bullets, and it goes up the more bullets you use, stopping at 3, which is where you do exactly twice that multiplier. And then, for each bullet after 3, your elemental skill damage is increased by 15%. Not your multiplier, just damage percentage, like a Golden Troop set for example. All these 0, 1, 2, 3 bullets equals 5, 7, 9, 11 shots is where it gets confusing. But to explain it, that represents the spread of the bullets released by the gun, which matters in AoE at longer ranges, but it doesn't change the way you play her because it mimics a shotgun, and you want to use a shotgun as close as possible to the enemy, to make sure everything hits and she gets the highest amount of damage. You also want to use her skill with at least 3 bullets to get the real high multiplier. From 4 to 6 bullets, you still get extra damage, but not as much as from 0 to 3. When you hold the skill, you can aim better, and she also absorbs any nearby Crystallite shields. You can just hold and quickly release it to focus down on an enemy and avoid any weird auto-targeting problem. The skill has 2 charges. It generates 3 or 4 particles with a 50-50 chance, and it releases a Uja hit every 7 seconds. When cast, it also activates Navia's Ascension 1, which gives her a Geo Infusion for 4 seconds and 40 extra damage on her attacks. This allows her to stay on field and perform a complete attack string. A small tip here is that you can cancel her N4 with a dash, which will barely make you able to perform an extra N1 that is still geo-infused. Her burst damages enemies nearby in an AoE for 12 seconds and provides her 1 bullet for her elemental skill every 2.4 seconds. The burst hits a total of 17 times, it has a 3 hits ICT, which means at most it can provide 6 Crystallite reactions, but keep in mind that Crystallites cannot be triggered on the same enemy more than once per second anyway. Lastly, her other Ascension talents gives her 20% attack for each Pyro, Electro, Cryo, Hydro character in the party, up to 2 times for possibly 40% attack. To understand how to play her, keep in mind that her burst does not snapshot, so you can use it to open up your team rotation. She will want to come on field when at least 3 bullets are there, generated by her burst, Crystallite shields picked up, or a combination of the 2. Use her skill as close as possible to the enemy and then perform 4 normals. Or, for the more skilled players, 4 normals into a dash into a 1 normal. If that's too hard, you can also perform N3, dash, N2, but this has a little bit less damage. Still better than just doing N4 though. She now has the option to stay on field for another skill and repeat, or go off field and come back to it later. She's also able to just play for the skill without following up with her normals. This gameplay shines in teams where there is another damage dealer that can fill the time. Her talent priority will be for the skill in basically all scenarios. Normals and burst, however, when everything is used, represent the other half of her damage, so they shouldn't be totally disregarded. Before talking about her builds, know that these videos, especially the next part, take a lot of time to make, so please consider dropping a comment or a sub. Building Navia is going to be tricky in some parts, but easy in others. I will show the calculations that I made so you can pause and check anything that does not get mentioned. Keep in mind that Navia is an attack scaler and her Ascension will provide extra crit damage. You are very rarely considering anything but attack, geo, crit main stats for your artifacts. Some energy recharge will be necessary, but her decent energy generation and being able to usually catch her own particles allows her to get away with just a few substats. Crit and attack are her go-to other subs. She loves the new artifact set, and I have a couple videos that talk about it, but briefly, this is her signature set and best option for most scenarios. She really wants to gather Crystallite shields, so it complements her kit, and their very high base defense translates into a slightly easier time keeping the Crystallite shield up. The 4-piece bonus, fully used, provides 50% geo damage, not comparable to any other set in the game, except the Marechosi Hunter, which becomes the best in slot when fully stacked and of course in a Furina team. Remember that the Hunter set stacks lasts only 5 seconds, so switching in and out often might cost you damage. Golden Troop's full 4-piece bonus can be used if pressing the skill right away after a switch, and if that's the entire focus of a rotation, it can be a good option, but generally otherwise will perform worse than any 2-piece option. Anything other than these sets is simply a no-go. Archaic Petra could have some uses, but it really depends on the team. For the weapons, I'm very positively surprised by how competitive Serpent Spine is, especially compared to her own weapon, Verdict. It of course requires you to play her in the first slot in the Abyss, waiting for the stacks before starting, and keeping them up, but with Zhongli or other shields, it will not be a big issue. Crystallize is not enough protection, but it always depends on the context. The new event weapon is also quite good and a decent free-to-play option. Same for Tidal Shadow, but that requires continuous healing and does not work with overflowing healing, so it's another Furina option. Sacrificial Greatsword is actually fantastic, gives her an extra skill cast, which is also extra energy. In the calcs I made, I only considered an extra skill being used and not an extra string of attacks, as I'd consider that to change the rotation too drastically and not be fair compared to the other weapons. Any other option is in the calcs for you to check. Navia teams feel a bit lackluster as of now. She enjoys having another Geo unit and elements that make sure enough Crystallized reactions are delivered, which makes for not that many teams. We will likely see the same archetype in different variation quite often in my opinion. Nonetheless, let's see what teams we can build. Double Geo with Bennett, Shanning or Bennett Fischl are probably going to be the most common Navia teams. Geo Resonance is a very strong buff with a rare and wanted Rest Shred. It's absolutely her best resonance and it also represents a decent team-wide buff. However, the Geo units that can be paired in a duo are not that many. Zhongli, Albedo and Ningguang definitely come on top. Zhongli will be very good and is able to buff her damage thanks to his extra Rest Shred and utility builds. Albedo can provide crystallizes and extra damage, while Ningguang can play like Navia herself, going online just for a quick burst of damage, making for a dual carry kind of team. Bennett and another off-field damage users are very safe picks. Furina teams might also want Bennett, which is great but still not the most ideal healer. We don't have that many healers that synergize well with Navia unfortunately. Furina is still such a good unit that it will make for a great team nonetheless. Some other options here are Noelle, which can drive a Furina plus Navia team, provide healing, shielding and allow Navia to come on field just to press her skill. Jhin could do something similar and buff both Furina and possibly another Hydra unit, but Navia is suffering from team building here and a different unit that complements the team better could do as well. I'm totally not a fan of triple Geo teams, especially with Goro. At this point Albedo or any off-fielder is probably more suited, but I could still see a similar team working just fine. But in the end, I think as long as Crystallize is produced, she doesn't interrupt the rotation too much, nor the reactions that are being used, Navia can participate in every team as a quick swap damage dealer, entering the field to use her powerful elemental skill and deliver extra damage with her burst, but most likely not that much on-field time. Going to Constellations, I'm not a fan of them in general and especially not Navia's, but briefly C1 is a fix to most TR problems with a cooldown reduction that is not that great. Anything past this is literally just bigger numbers, mostly focusing on crit value, so less important in some teams, but great when her attack and damage are buffed. And that was all for my Navia guide. Thank you so much for watching so far, stay tuned as I'm working on 2 videos for my 7 tips series, one on Navia and one on Ayaka. Remember that you can catch me live every day on twitch.tv/7nemonplease. You can join to ask me a question or just say hi. Have a nice day and I'll see you in the next one.